Who among the following was the founder of the Kanba dynasty? So the founder of Kanba dynasty is Vasudev Kanva. Vasudev Kanva. And he established the Kanva dynasty after defeating Sunghas. He will defeat the Sunghas and he will establish Kanva dynasty. Vasudev Kanva. And he will defeat Devabhuti. Devabhuti is the last Sungha ruler. Who's the last Sungha ruler? That is Devabhuti. So Vasudev Kanva defeats Devabhuti and becomes the king, becomes the king of Magadha. So Vasudev Kanva was the founder of the Kanva dynasty. The Kanva dynasty was established after the decline of the Shunga dynasty. Vasudev Kanva overthrew the last Shunga ruler Devabhuti and founded the Kanva dynasty around 75 BC. The Kanva ruled mainly the parts of Magad and continued several administrative, traditional, and and continued several administrative traditions of earlier dynasties. However, their rule was relatively short and lasted for about 45 years before they were replaced by the Satavahanas. Who were the Kanvas? The Kanvas were post-Mauryan ruling dynasty that succeeded the Shunga dynasty in Magad during the late first century BC. Although their rule was relatively short-lived, the Kanva formed an important link in the political history of northern India during the period after the decline of the Mauryan Empire. The dynasty was founded around 75 BCE by the Vasudev Kanva, who was originally a minister in the court of the last Shunga ruler Devabhuti. According to historical traditions and Puranic accounts, the Shunga kingdom had weakened significantly by this time, and Devabhuti was considered an ineffective ruler. Taking advantage of this political decline, Vasudev overthrew him and established the Kanva dynasty. So Vasudev Kanva will defeat Devabhuti, who is the last king of Shunghas, and he will become the king. Um, the Kanvas ruled mainly over Magad and parts of central India. Their capital remained Patliputra, which had previously served as the capital of the Mauryas and Shungas. Though the Kanvas did not control a vast empire like the Mauryas, they maintained political authority in the Gangetic region during a period marked by fragmentation and rise of regional kingdoms. The rules of the Kanva dynasty were the rulers of the Kanva dynasty were Brahmins by origin and considered important for continuing Brahminical political tradition after the Shungas. Even the Shungas were the Brahmins. Their rule reflected the broader transformation taking place in India after the collapse of the centralized imperial authority, when several regional dynasties emerged across different parts of the subcontinent. The Kanva dynasty had four rulers: Vasudev, Bhumimitra, Narayan, and Susharman. Among them, Vasudev Kanva was the founder and the most important ruler because he established the dynasty after overthrowing the Shungas. The last ruler, Susharman, was eventually defeated by Satavahanas. The Kanvas will be toppled by Satavahanas, which expanded northwards from Deccan. This defeat brought an end to the Kanva dynasty. So the first there are the Nanda. If I am supposed to write it in a proper order, so first there will be Nandas. Nandas will be toppled by the Mauryas. Mauryas will be toppled by the Sunghas. Sunghas will be toppled by the Kanvas. Kanvas will be toppled by Satavahanas. This is the chronology. Okay. Nandas, Mauryas, Sunghas, Kanvas, and Satavahanas. This chronology will follow. All right. Next. What is the next one? Array. Next. Yeah, this is. Which of the following pair of ruling period is correctly matched? Sher Shah Suri between 1540 to 1545, Akbar between 1556 to 1605. So yes, Sher Shah defeated Humayun in 1540 at Battle of Kannauj and became the ruler. So this is correct. and he ruled only for 5 years. Akbar defeated Hemu in 1556 and became the ruler, and he ruled for next 49 years. So this is also true. So both are true. Both 1 and 2 are true. Let's discuss this. Hmm. Sher Khan ruled from 1540 to 1545, while Akbar ruled from 1556 to 1605. Therefore, therefore, both ruler period ruler period pairs given in the question are correct. Sher Shah Suri came to power after defeating Humayun and established the Sur Empire in North India. Although his reign only lasted 5 years, he became one of the most efficient administrators in medieval Indian history. He reorganized the revenue system, improved the administration, strengthened military organization, and developed roads and communication networks. He re he renovated the and extended the Grand Trunk Road, connecting important regions of the empire, and established sarais for traveling along major routes. Sher Shah also introduced. One second. Sher Shah also introduced. What is it? Sher Shah also introduced the silver coin called rupiah. Rupiah, which is still used. Rupiah. Who introduced rupiah? It was Sher Khan or Sher Shah Suri, which later became the foundation of the modern rupee system. So rupiah was introduced by Sher Shah, and which eventually became the foundation of the modern rupee system. After the decline of Sur Empire, Humayun, after the decline of the Sur Empire, Humayun briefly regained the Mughal throne, but after his death in 1556, his son Akbar became ruler of the Mughal Empire. Akbar ruled from 1556 to 1605 and transformed the Mughal state into one of the most powerful empires in Indian history. During his reign, the Mughal Empire expanded greatly across North and Central India. Akbar is remembered for his administrative reforms, centralized governance, military organization, and policy of religious tolerance. He introduced the Mansabdari system for administration and military ranking and promoted the idea of Sulh Kul, meaning universal peace and tolerance among different religion communities. So let's talk about some important facts regarding Sher Shah Suri, and this will be comprehensive explanation of everything that Sher Shah had done in his life, which is important from exam point of view. So Sher Shah Suri was one of the most remarkable rulers in the medieval Indian history, because unlike many kings who are remembered only for battle, Sher Shah completely transformed road, currency, taxation, policing, communication, military organization, and governance in the North India in an extremely short time. His official reign lasted only from 1540 to 1545, barely 5 years, yet his impact became so deep that even Mughal Empire under Akbar later copied many of his reforms almost directly. Historians often say that Babur conquered India, but Sher Shah showed how India could actually be governed efficiently. So it was actually Sher Shah Suri who showed that how India could actually be governed efficiently. What he did, let's discuss that. Sher Shah Suri was originally born as Farid Khan. This is the original name of Sher Shah Suri, Farid Khan. Around 1486 in Sasaram, located in present-day Bihar. So he was actually a Bihari. He belonged to Sur clan of Afghans who had so the Sur clan after the defeat of Muhammad Ghori, the Afghans had actually settled in Bihar. And from Bihar, they were actually trying to regain power, but every single time they were being defeated by some powerful ruler of the Mughal. But what happened after Babur came Humayun, and Humayun was not as powerful and he was not as militarily driven as Babur. Babur had a lot of great knowledge and courage to lead a big army, while Humayun did not. Humayun did not have that military brilliance. So the Afghans were able to gather themselves up in the Bihar region, and they were able to consolidate under the leadership of Sher Khan, which who eventually got to be known as Sher Shah Suri. So he belonged to the Sur clan of Afghans, and his father Hassan Khan Sur was a Jagirdar controlling the territories around Sasaram. Unlike princes who were raised in luxurious royal courts, Farid is Sher Khan. Farid's childhood was harsh, politically tense, and emotionally difficult because his father had multiple wives and family rivalries were constant. Farid reportedly did not receive much affection from his stepmother, and these tensions pushed him towards self-reliance, discipline, and ambition from a young age. Instead of wasting his youth in luxury, he focused heavily on Persian language, administration, military affairs, politics, and began governance. This early exposure later became one of the biggest reason behind his administrative brilliance. This is 1 second. मैं कर लूंगा रुक तो जाओ हटाने तो तुम हटाओ बस ठीक है। लगा के लगाओ Sher Shah was originally born as a Farid Khan around 1486 in Sasaram, located in present-day Bihar. He belonged to the Sur clan of the Afghans, and his father Hasan Khan soon was Jagirdar patrolling territories around Sasaram. Unlike princes who were raised in luxurious royal courts, Farid's childhood was harsh, politically tense, and emotionally difficult. Because his father had multiple wives and family rivalries were constant, Farid reportedly did not receive much affection from his stepmother, and these tensions pushed him towards self-reliance, discipline, and ambition from a young age. Instead of wasting his youth in luxury, he focused heavily on Persian language, administration, military affairs, politics, and practical governance. This early exposure later became one of the biggest reasons behind his military brilliance. Then, during his early career, Farid entered the service of the Afghan nobles in Bihar. At that time, North India was politically unstable. The Bihar Sultanate had weakened badly after Ibrahim Lodi's defeat at the First Battle of Panipat in 1526. This is when Babur defeats Ibrahim Lodi in the First Battle of Panipat. Afghan chiefs across Bihar and eastern India were fragmented and constantly competing with one another. Farid carefully observed that these weaknesses, unlike ordinary Afghan nobles who depended mostly on bravery and tribal loyalty, Farid understood that importance of administration, discipline, planning, and centralized authority. While serving Bahar Khan Lohani, the Afghan governor of Bihar, Farid reportedly killed a tiger single-handedly during a hunt. Because of this act, he received the title Sher Khan. So he received the title when he killed, according to the folklore, that when he killed a tiger or a lion single-handedly, while he was working for Bahar Khan Lohani, who was an Afghan governor of Bihar. Bahar Khan Lohani, where Sher meets tiger or lion. This incident became legendary and transformed his political identity permanently. Then Bahar Khan Lohani became deeply impressed with Sher Khan's intelligence and administrative abilities. He appointed him as tutor and guardian to his son Jalal Khan. Over time, Sher Khan effectively became the real power behind Bihar's administration. He gradually expanded his influence while outwardly remaining loyal. This period was extremely important because Sher Khan learned how regional administration functioned, how land revenue worked, how nobles manipulated powers, and how military logistics determined political survival. He also realized that Mughal Empire under Humayun was not as stable as it appeared. Babur had conquered India through military brilliance, but after his death in 1530, Humayun inherited an empire filled with internal rivalries, weak finances, rebellious brothers, and unstable nobles. Sher Khan patiently waited for the right opportunity instead of rushing into reckless war. So 1530, Babur had conquered India, but after his death in 1530, Humayun inherited the empire filled with internal rivalries. Because all the brothers of Babur, they were not very much supportive. All the brothers of Humayun, they were not very much supportive of him. They were also fighting to gain power and become the main king of the Mughal Empire. Weak finances, rebellious brothers, very, very important, and unstable nobles. Sher Khan patiently waited for the right opportunity instead of rushing into reckless war. Then, during the 1520s and early 1530s, Sher Khan systematically increased his authority across Bihar. He built a loyal Afghan military network and accumulated wealth carefully. Unlike impulsive rulers, he understood that treasure and logistics were more important than temporary battlefield glory. One of the most important developments during this phase was his growing control over Chunar Fort near Varanasi. Chunar was strategically critical because it controlled the communication routes between East India and the Gangetic Plains. Whoever controlled Chunar could dominate movement between Bihar, Bengal, and North India. Sher Khan strengthened this fort heavily and used it as a strategic base for future expansion. So Chunar Port, which is near Varanasi, was very strategically important because whoever controlled it controlled the communication route between eastern India and Gangetic Plain, and whoever controlled Chunar could dominate movement between Bihar, Bengal, and North India. And at that point of time, these three places were very, very important. Sher Khan strengthened his fort heavily and used it as a strategic base for future expansion. At the time, At the time, Bengal was going through political instability. Despite being one of the richest regions in India, Bihar's enormous agricultural wealth and trade revenues attracted ambitious rulers constantly. Sher Khan began interfering in Bengal's politics and gradually expanded influence there. Meanwhile, Humayun committed one strategic mistake after another. Instead of crushing Sher Khan quickly, Humayun became distracted by campaigns in Gujarat against Bahadur Shah. This gave Sher Khan valuable time to consolidate Bihar and Bengal, almost without major Mughal resistance. Historians often consider this delay one of Humayun's greatest political blunders because it allowed Sher Khan to transform from a regional Afghan noble into a serious imperial challenger. By the mid 1530s, Sher Khan had become powerful enough to openly challenge Mughal authority. By 1530s, mid 1530s. 1530 is the time period when Babur's death, Babur's death, and by 1535, Sher Shah Suri has become very strong. Suri became proper competitor, proper competitor to to the Mughals, to the Mughals. He moved aggressively into Bengal and captured major territories where Bengal's capital Gaur immediately fell under his influence, giving him access to enormous treasury reserves because Bengal was responsible for most of the trade that used to happen at that point of time. This financial strength became crucial because maintaining cavalry, artillery, fort, and disciplined soldiers required massive amount of money. Sher Khan understood warfare economically, not just militarily. A ruler without a stable revenue system could not maintain long campaigns. While Humayun still underestimated him, Sher Khan was already preparing for direct confrontation with the Mughal Empire. itself. So even after Sher Shah Suri has captured Bengal, Humayun is still underestimating, and Sher Shah Suri is getting ready to capture the Mughal Empire. Humayun finally marched eastwards against Sher Khan in 1537, but his campaign revealed weak strategic thinking. Instead of pursuing Sher Khan rapidly, Humayun wasted precious time besieging the Chunar fort. The siege lasted months, and while Humayun remained occupied there, Sher Khan completed his consolidation of Bengal. By the time Humayun advanced deeper eastwards, Sher Khan had already secured resources and strategic advances. Humayun then entered Bengal and occupied Gaur, but instead of continuing aggressive military pursuit, he remained there enjoying celebrations and luxury. Because Mughals were very much into enjoying shell celebrations and luxury. This was another disastrous mistake because it allowed Sher Khan to isolate Mughal forces gradually. Meanwhile, Humayun's own brothers, especially Kamran and Hindal, remained politically unreliable and often pursued personal ambition instead of supporting imperial unity. Sher Khan recognized that Mughal internal weakness was now severe enough to exploit fully, and that's where he will hammer them. After defeating Humayun in Kannauj in 1540, so 1537 is the time period when Humayun is marching eastward. Humayun marches eastward, and 1540 is when Humayun gets defeated. Sher Shah wins. Sher Shah wins. So that's how much Sher Shah Suri was prepared for Humayun's movement. And after defeating Humayun at Kannauj in 1540s, this battle is known as Battle of Kannauj, and capturing Delhi and Agra, Sher Shah Suri had effectively become the undisputed ruler of the North India. However, unlike many conquerors who became relaxed after victory, Sher Shah immediately understood that conquering an empire and maintaining an empire were completely different things. North India during the 16th century was politically unstable, economically fragmented, and filled with ambitious nobles waiting for opportunities to rebel. Afghan nobles, especially, had a long tradition of tribal independence and disliked the strict centralized authority. Sher Shah therefore realized that if he wanted the Sur Empire to survive, he needed to crush disorder quickly and establish fear, efficiency, and administrative discipline throughout the empire. One of Sher Shah's major concern, again, this is also very important. One of Sher Shah's major concern after becoming emperor was possibility of Humayun returning from northwest. Even though Humayun had fled, he was still alive, and as long as he remained alive, he represented a danger to the Sur Empire. Sher Shah therefore moved rapidly towards Punjab and secured the northwestern frontier regions. He strengthened military positions, recognized provincial administration, and ensured that no important Afghan chief became powerful enough to challenge central authority independently. Sher Shah understood that medieval empires often collapsed not because of foreign invasions, but because provincial governors slowly became semi-independent and rebellious. That's exactly what's happening to Humayun. There was no foreign invader who's attacking Humayun. It was Sher Shah and the Afghans who were consolidated in a very tiny portion, and Humayun did not pay attention to them. And when these individuals became incredibly strong, these individuals under the leadership of Sher Shah Suri, who was an exceptional military commander and an empire builder. He retaliated and he took away all the land and all the empire of the Mughals. So Sher Shah understood it, and he never allowed any Afghan chief to become powerful enough to challenge central authority independently. He never allowed that. Okay. Then during this phase, Sher Shah ordered the construction of the famous Rohtas fort in present-day Pakistan. So famous Rohtas fort is also being built by Sher Shah. This fort was one of the greatest military structure of its time and was designed mainly to suppress rebellious tribes in the northwest and prevent any Mughal return through that route. The fort demonstrated Sher Shah's strategic mindset perfectly. Unlike rulers who focused mainly on palace construction, Sher Shah prioritized military infrastructure and frontier security. Rohtas Fort was had massive defensive walls, strong gates, strategic elevations, and enough military capacity to control the surrounding regions effectively. Even today, historians consider it one of the finest examples of Afghan military architecture in South Asia. So, Rohtas Fort in Pakistan is being built by Sher Shah Suri, and it had massive defensive walls, strong gates, strategic elevation, and enough military capacity to control the surrounding region effectively. Even today, historians consider it one of the finest examples of the Afghan military architecture in South Asia. Then, Sher Shah also recognized that Rajasthan represented another major challenge. Rajput states were extremely proud, militarily capable, and deeply attached to their independence. Unlike many regional chiefs who surrendered quickly after the defeat, Rajput rulers often continued resistance for years. Sher Shah therefore approached Rajasthan carefully. Instead of launching reckless attacks immediately, he first attempted political diplomacy and strategic pressure. However, conflict eventually became unavoidable, especially with Maldev Rathod of Marwar, who, who was considered one of the most powerful Rajput rulers of the period. The campaign against Maldev Rathod around 1544 became one of the most dangerous movements of Sher Shah's entire career. Maldev controlled large parts of Rajasthan and possessed strong cavalry forces familiar with desert warfare. Sher Shah initially became worried because of direct confrontation in Rajput territory, carried huge risks. According to historical documents, Sher Shah cleverly used forged letters and psychological warfare to create distrust within the Rajput camp. So he's also using, clever tactics. He's trying to create distress. He's using forged letters. He's writing fake letters to create distrust among the Rajputs. Some Rajput commanders began suspecting internal betrayal, weakening their unity at a critical moment. Even then, Rajput resistance remained fierce. After the campaign, Sher Shah reportedly admitted that he had nearly lost the empire of Hindustan for a handful of millet, referring to the harsh desert region where the battle occurred. So, because the place where he was fighting the battle, the Rajput kingdoms, almost nothing can be grown in those regions. But because those individuals were militarily very strong, so it was also important to fight against them and suppress them. So he used this metaphor that just for a handful of millet, I almost lost the entire empire of Hindustan. Sher Shah has written it on his own, has said this on his own. Nobody is uh, saying it for him. He said it on his own. Referring to the harsh desert region where the battle occurred. The statement reveals how seriously he viewed Rajput military strength. Then, despite these military campaigns, Sher Shah never abandoned his administrative focus. In fact, one of the most extraordinary aspects of his rule was his ability to wage wars while simultaneously improving governance. He regularly monitored provincial officers and demanded detailed reports regarding taxation, crime, agriculture, trade, and military preparedness. Corruption among officials was punished severely because Sher Shah believed corruption weakened the state more dangerously than foreign enemies. I wish you know Indian politicians thought the same way. He knew that if peasants, merchants, and soldiers lost trust in the administration, the empire would eventually collapse from within. Sher Shah's land revenue often deserve special attention because they fundamentally changed the relationship between the state and cultivators. Before this, before his reign, taxation in many regions depended heavily on arbitrary demands by the local officials or jagirdars. Peasants frequently suffered from exploitation because there were no fixed standards regarding revenue assessment. Sher Shah attempted to solve this problem scientifically. Agricultural land was measured carefully using standardized methods. Productivity estimates were calculated based on the crop pattern and regional fertility. The state demand was then fixed more scientifically, usually around one third of the produce. So this was how he demanded tax. Sher Shah also produced written agreements between state and cultivators. The patta specified the amount of land held and the revenue expected from it, while Kabuliyat represented the cultivators' acceptance of these conditions. So he used to make them sign this. This may appear ordinary today, but during the 16th century it was revolutionary because it reduced arbitrary exploitation significantly. Peasants now had at least some clarity regarding taxation instead of facing unpredictable demands from the corrupt intermediaries. Historians often observe that Akbar's famous revenue reform under Raja Todarmal were deeply influenced by the foundation established during Sher Shah's reign. So Akbar also, he was a great empire builder, and he also learned from these things that were initiated by Sher Shah. He also utilized the same principles while creating his own revenue system and his taxation system. Then Sher Shah paid special attention to roads and communication because he understood that a large empire could not survive without fast movement of information and armies. He rebuilt and expanded the ancient highway system connecting eastern India with northwestern regions. His route later became famous for Grand Trunk Road. The road stretched from Bengal through Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Delhi, Punjab, and towards Afghanistan. Trees were planted alongside roads for shade. Wells were constructed for travelers, and sarais are the rest houses, were established at regular intervals. These sarais were much more than simple inns. They functioned as centers of communication, intelligence gathering, trade support, and administrative supervision. Merchants, travelers, officials, and soldiers used them. Merchants uh, used them constantly. Separate arrangements were often maintained for Hindus and Muslims to accommodate their social customs comfortably. Each sarai also maintained horses for postal communication, allowing government messages to travel rapidly across long distances. These postal relay system became one of the most efficient communication network in medieval India. So sarais were not just, this is a very, very important paragraph because sarais were not just rest houses. They functioned as center of communication and intelligence gathering. Sher Shah used to get to know a lot about the traders and what they are thinking about him when they used to rest in these places and talk about what's going on in the empire and what's happening with the trade. They also acted as a trade support and administrative supervision. They used to supervise the administration through these places. Merchant, travelers, officials, and soldiers used them constantly. Separate arrangements were often made for Hindus and Muslims to accommodate their social customs comfortably. So if the Hindus and Muslims have, because they have a bit of different culture, so that there would be no conflict and there would be no communal violence. So separate arrangement used to made for the Hindus as well as for the Muslims. So if they want to practice if it is a festival, if it is something going around for the Hindus and for the Muslims, they can celebrate it among their own community and not interfere the Muslims. And if the Muslims want to celebrate some of their festivals, they can celebrate it in a separate place in the same sarai in a different room with their community and not disturb the Hindus. These arrangements were also made by Sher Shah Suri, so that also showcase his social understanding. Each sarai also maintained horses and postal communication, allowing government message to travel rapidly across long distances. This postal relay system became one of the most efficient communication network in medieval India. Then we come to trade. Trade expanded dramatically under Sher Shah because improved roads and security encouraged merchants to travel more confidently. Sher Shah reduced many unnecessary internal customs duties that had previously slowed commerce. Instead of paying taxes repeatedly while crossing the different territories, traders usually paid at fixed points. This simplified economic activity greatly. Merchant carried textiles, horses, species, grains, metals, and many of the things. Economic stability increased state revenue naturally because trade volumes expanded. Sher Shah's currency reform also played a major role in economic stability. Before his reign, multiple local currencies created confusion and inconsistency in commercial transactions. Sher Shah introduced a more standardized system based mainly on silver rupiah. The rupiah became highly respected because of its reliable weight and purity over time. This currency evolved into the modern rupee used across the Indian subcontinent alongside the silver rupiah. Sher Shah also issued gold mohars, and copper paisas, creating a stable tri-metallic monetary currency. So under the reign of Sher Shah, the currency is divided into three parts. One is the silver rupiah, then there is copper paisa, and then there is gold mohar. And we still follow rupiah and paisa to this day, right? Law and order under Sher Shah became famous throughout North India. He believed strongly that the ruler's first responsibility was ensuring security of the for ordinary people. Local officials were held personally responsible for crime occurring within their jurisdiction. If robbery or murder occurred and the criminal was not captured, local authorities themselves could face punishment. This policy created enormous pressure on administrators to maintain security actively rather than ignoring crimes casually. Contemporary chronicles remained that travelers could move safely carrying gold across large distances without fear of robbery. So Sher Shah is doing great things. Sher Shah's intelligence network was another major reason behind the success. He relied heavily on spies and secret reports to monitor noble governors, military commanders, and provincial administrators. Medieval rulers often became victim of conspiracies because they depended blindly on powerful nobles. Sher Shah avoided this mistake by constantly gathering information independently. His intelligence system allowed him to identify rebellion or corruption before it became dangerous. This administrative vigilance became one of the defining character of his rule. So let's study the last paragraph, and after that we will move on to the next question. Militarily, Sher Shah maintained a disciplined and professional army. Soldiers received regular salaries in cash instead of depending entirely on loot from warfare. Horses were branded to prevent fraud. This was started by Alauddin Khilji, and detailed record of soldiers were maintained. These reforms reduced corruption within the military system and improved battlefield efficiency. Sher Shah also emphasized mobility and rapid movement. His cavalry forces became highly effective because they were supported by the good road, efficient communication, and stable revenue systems. So this was the rule of Sher Shah Suri or Sher Khan, who ruled from 1520 to 1545. Akbar ruled from 1556 to 1605. Next. In which of the following year did Subhash Chandra Bose refer Mahatma Gandhi as the father of the nation? When is he referring to Mahatma Gandhi as father of the nation? So the correct answer is, hold on. The correct answer is 1944. 1944. Subhash Chandra Bose referred to Mahatma Gandhi as father of the nation in the year 1940. Subhash Chandra Bose used this expression during a radio broadcast from Singapore while addressing Mahatma Gandhi at the time. Bose was leading Indian National Army, and was attempting to free India from the British rule through armed struggle during the Second World War. During the Second World War. So at that point of time, he referred Mahatma Gandhi as father of the nation. Okay. In his message, Bose sought Gandhi's blessing for success of India's independence movement and respectfully addressed him as the father of the nation. This became one of the most influential historical references associated with Mahatma Gandhi. Although Bose and Gandhi differed significantly in political methods and strategies, Bose continued to admire Gandhi's leadership and his immense influence on Indian masses. Gandhi believed in non-violence and mass civil disobedience, while Bose supported militant nationalism and armed resistance against the British rule. Despite these ideological differences, both acknowledged Gandhi's central role in awakening the national consciousness in India. The Indian National Army under Bose worked alongside Japanese forces during the war and aimed to militarily challenge British rule in India. Bose became famous for slogans such as "Give me blood and I will give you freedom, Jai Hind." These are the two very famous slogans that were very much popularized by Subhash Chandra Bose. His leadership inspired many Indians with ideas of sacrifice, nationalism, and militant struggle for independence. Complete explanation of this. The correct answer is 1944 because Subhash Chandra Bose referred to Mahatma Gandhi as the father of the nation during a famous radio broadcast from Singapore in 6 July 1944. Very, very important date. So his security was very much under threat in India. So he spent a large point of time in Singapore as well. This movement became historically significant because it was one of the earliest phases of recorded use of phrase "father of the nation" specifically for Gandhi. Bose addressed Gandhi respectfully despite their major political disagreements and appealed to him for blessing in India's struggle for independence. To understand this, to understand why this statement became historically important, it is necessary to understand the relationship between Subhash Chandra Bose and Mahatma Gandhi in deep detail because many students wrongly assume that both leaders always worked together smoothly. In reality, their relationship was extremely complex. They respected each other personally, but differed sharply in ideology, political strategy, economic vision, and methods of achieving independence. Yet, despite their differences, both still publicly referred to Gandhi as the father of the nation, which shows the enormous emotional and symbolic support Gandhi held within the Indian freedom movement. During the early 20th century, the Indian freedom struggle was evolving rapidly. After the revolt of 1857, the British Crown took direct control over India from East India Company. Over time, political consciousness began increasing among educated Indians. The Indian National Congress was founded in 1885, initially functioning as a moderate political organization, asking for administrative reform rather than complete independence. Leaders like Dadabhai Naroji, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, and Surendranath Banerjee believed constitutional methods and gradual reforms would eventually secure Indian rights, but they were not very right in this mentality. However, by the early 20th century, frustration against the British rule intensified. Partition of Bengal in 1905, economic exploitation, racial discrimination, famines, and political repression increased anti-British sentiment strongly. Revolutionary nationalism began emerging while in Bengal, Punjab, and Maharashtra, leaders like Bal Gangadhar Tilak promoted more aggressive nationalism. Into this changing political atmosphere emerged Mahatma Gandhi after returning from South Africa in 1915. Gandhi transformed Indian politics completely. Before Gandhi, Congress politics remained mostly limited to educated elites. Gandhi brought peasants, workers, women, students, traders, and ordinary villagers directly into the freedom movement. His methods of satyagraha, non-cooperation, civil disobedience, boycott movement, and non-violent resistance created mass political participation on a scale never seen before in Indian history. Gandhi also linked politics with ethics, morality, spirituality, and self discipline. For millions of Indians, Gandhi gradually became not merely a politician but a moral support of the nation itself. Subhash Chandra Bose belonged to a younger generation of nationalist leaders, deeply inspired by the patriotism but impatient with gradual approaches. Bose was born in 1897, so you can imagine how young he was. Right? He was born in 1897 in Cuttack, in Odisha, in a well educated family. Brilliant academically, he later qualified for the prestigious Indian Civil Service examination in England, which was one of the most difficult examinations for Indians under the British rule. However, Bose resigned from the services before formally joining because he believed serving the British government conflicted with nationalist ideals. This decision immediately established him as a deeply committed patriot, willing to sacrifice personal success for India's independence. Bose soon became associated with more radical wing of Indian nationalism. He admired discipline, organization, military strength, sacrifice, and revolutionary energy. While Gandhi emphasized non-violence and gradual mass awakening, Bose increasingly believed that British imperialism would ultimately require forceful confrontation. However, despite ideological differences, Bose initially respected Gandhi greatly because Gandhi had transformed the freedom struggle into a mass national movement. During the 1920s and 1930s, Bose rose rapidly within the Indian National Congress. He became especially popular among students, youth workers, and radical nationalists who wanted faster and more aggressive action against the British rule. Bose also admired socialist economic leaders and believed that independent India requires strong centralized and industrialization and centralized planning. Gandhi, in contrast, emphasized village industries, decentralization, and non-violent social transformation. These ideological differences gradually became more serious over time. One of the major turning point came in 1938 when Bose became president of the Indian National Congress at the Haripura session. As Congress president, Bose pushed for a stronger anti-British mobilization and wanted India to prepare for more direct confrontation with the colonial rule. Internationally, the world was moving towards the Second World War, and Bose believed Britain's coming difficulty would create opportunity for India's freedom struggle. In 1939, Bose sought re-election as Congress president at the Tripuri session. Gandhi indirectly supported Pattabhi Sitaramaya against Bose. However, Bose defeated Gandhi's preferred candidate. Despite his victory, Bose soon realized that most senior Congress leaders aligned with Gandhi and opposed Bose's aggressive political direction. Gandhi famously declared that Sitaramaya's defeat was more mine than his, indicating how personally the contest had become politically. After winning election, Bose faced immense organizational resistance within Congress. Many senior leaders refused to cooperate fully with him. Eventually, Bose resigned from the Congress presidency and later formed the Forward Bloc in 1939 to consolidate left wing nationalist forces. This episode revealed the deep ideological divide between Gandhi and Bose regarding the future direction of the freedom movement. When the Second World War began in 1939, Bose believed Britain's war crisis created a historic opportunity for India to launch a decisive struggle for independence. Gandhi, however, remained committed to non-violent methods even during wartime. Bose strongly criticized British hypocrisy, arguing that Britain claimed to fight for democracy in Europe while simultaneously denying freedom to India. British authorities viewed Bose as extremely dangerous because of his radical influence and mass popularity. He was repeatedly imprisoned. Eventually, he was placed under the house arrest in Calcutta. In one of the most dramatic episodes in modern Indian history, Bose escaped from the house arrest in January 1941, disguised as a Pathan insurance agent. British intelligence was completely shocked by his disappearance. Bose traveled secretly across India and Afghanistan before eventually reaching Germany. His objective was very clear: secure international support against the British rule. Bose believed Britain's enemies during the Second World War could potentially assist Indian liberation struggle. In Germany, Bose attempted to organize Indian prisoners of war and sought access support for the Indian independence. However, Bose eventually shifted focus towards Southeast Asia, where thousands of Indian soldiers captured by Japan were available for military organization. He traveled by submarine in an extraordinary dangerous journey and eventually reached Southeast Asia in 1943. There he assumed leadership of the Indian National Army known as the Azad Hind Fauj. The Indian National Army had originally been formed under Mohan Singh with Japanese support, but under Bose it gained massive symbolic energy and organizational direction. Bose became famous for slogans like "Give me blood and I will give you freedom" and "Delhi Chalo." Unlike Gandhi's non-violent movement, Bose openly believed armed struggle could help with overthrow British rule. In October 1943, Bose proclaimed the Provisional Government of Free India, also known as Azad Hind Government. Several Axis-aligned countries recognized it diplomatically. Bose established ministries, military structures, and even symbolic national institutions. The INA later participated alongside Japanese forces in campaigns near India's northeastern frontier, including the Imphal and Kohima sectors. Despite military difficulties, Bose's popularity among Indians increased enormously because he represented uncompromising resistance against the British rule. Even many Indians who disagreed with his alliance with the Axis powers admired his courage, sacrifices, and determination. Bose's charismatic personality, military uniform, fierce speeches, and dramatic escape stories turned him into a legendary nationalist figure. It was during this wartime period that Bose made the famous reference to Gandhi as the father of the nation. So on 6 July 1944, Bose addressed Gandhi through a radio broadcast from Singapore. At this time, the INA and Japanese forces were engaged in the military operations near India's borders. Bose knew that Gandhi remained the most respected national leader inside India, despite the ideological differences between them. In the broadcast, Bose appealed emotionally to Gandhi for blessing in the final struggle against the British rule. Bose declared, "Father of our nation, in this holy war for India's liberation, we ask for your blessings and for good wishes." This statement became historically famous because it publicly described Gandhi as father of the nation. The phrase reflected Gandhi's enormous symbolic importance within the Indian national movement. Even Bose, who disagreed with Gandhi's strategy of non-violence and had separated politically from Congress leadership, still recognized Gandhi's unparalleled moral authority among Indians. The timing of the statement is also extremely important. By 1944, the freedom movement had already experienced decades of struggle, non-cooperation movement, civil disobedience movement, imprisonment of leaders, revolutionary activities, peasant mobilization, and Quit India movement of 1942. Gandhi had become internationally identified with India's moral resistance against colonialism. Bose therefore understood that invoking Gandhi carried huge emotional significance for Indian worldwide. Many students wrongly assume that Bose called Gandhi father of the nation meant complete ideological agreement. This is incorrect. Bose and Gandhi still differed fundamentally in methods and political philosophy. Gandhi remained committed to non-violence even during global war, while Bose openly advocated military struggle with foreign assistance if needed. Gandhi emphasized moral transformation and decentralized village-based economics, where Bose favored centralized industrial modernization and strong state planning. However, both leaders shared overriding objective, complete independence of India. Bose respected Gandhi's ability to awaken the national consciousness among millions of ordinary Indians. Gandhi similarly respected Bose's patriotism and sacrifice. Even when disagreement disagreeing with his methods, their relationship therefore combined admiration and disagreement, emotional respect and political conflict simultaneously. Simultaneously. The phrase "father of the nation" later became deeply associated with Gandhi in the Indian Republic memory. However, it is important to note technically that no official constitutional title was ever legally granted to Gandhi by Indian state. The Constitution of India does not formally declare anyone as a father of the nation. Nevertheless, culturally and historically, Gandhi became widely recognized by the title because of his immense role in the freedom struggle. Bose's statement also gained importance after independence because it symbolized unity within diversity of the nationalist movement. The Indian national struggle was not ideologically uniform. Moderates, revolutionaries, socialists, constitutionalists, peasants, workers, spiritual leaders, armed nationalists, and non-violent activists all participated in different ways. Gandhi and Bose represented two different approaches, yet both became immortal figures in the Indian nationalism. The later fate of Bose added more moral emotional power to his legacy. In 1945, after Japan's defeat in the Second World War, Bose reportedly died in a plane crash near Taiwan. However, controversies regarding his death continued for decades because many supporters refused to believe he had died. Numerous theories emerged claiming Bose survived secretly. Regardless of these controversies, Bose became one of the most revered revolutionary figures in modern Indian history. Meanwhile, Gandhi continued playing a central role, playing during the final years before independence. India eventually achieved independence in 1947, though accompanied by partition and horrific communal violence. Gandhi spent his final months trying desperately to stop Hindu Muslim riots and restore peace. In January 1948, Gandhi was assassinated by Nathuram Godse, shocking the entire nation. After Gandhi's assassination, the phrase father of the nation became even more emotionally powerful because millions associated Gandhi with sacrifice, morality, simplicity, and the soul of the and the soul of the freedom movement. Bose's earlier 1944 address therefore acquired almost prophetic historical significance. So that is the answer. Moving on. In 1498, Vasco da Gama, a Portuguese explorer, had discovered a route to, of course, Vasco da Gama in 1498 came to India. Very, very simple, India. Vasco da Gama's journey to India. Vasco da Gama undertook one of the most important voyages in world history when he discovered the direct sea route from Europe to India in 1498. His journey marked the beginning of the direct maritime trade between Europe and Asia and opened the way for European colonial expansion in Indian Ocean region. During the 5th century, European countries were searching for a direct sea route to India because India was famous for valuable goods such as spices, silk, cotton, textile, precious stones, and perfumes. European traders wanted to bypass the traditional overland trade routes and controlled mainly by Arab merchants and Italian sea states like Venice, which made Asian goods extremely expensive in Europe. Portugal became the leading European country in maritime exploration during this period. Earlier Portuguese explorers, especially under the encouragement of Prince Henry the Navigator, he was so he was so motivated that he even put the word navigator with his name. His actual name was only Prince Henry, but the navigator, this title was taken up by him because he was so excited and motivated by the idea of discovering India, discovering sea route to India, because the Ottoman Empire had completely blocked the land route between Europe and India. Prince Henry the Navigator had already explored the western coast of Africa. In 1488, Bartholomew Diaz reached the southern tip of Africa, proving that a sea route towards Indian Ocean was possible. So Bartholomew Diaz found Cape of Good Hope. In 1488, he reached Cape of Good Hope, which is the southernmost tip of Africa. Building upon these earlier explorations, the Portuguese king selected Vasco da Gama to lead an expedition in India. In July 1497, Vasco da Gama sailed from Lisbon with 4 ships and a crew of around 170 men. His fleet moved towards the western coast of Africa and then around Cape of Good Hope, which was considered extremely dangerous because of storms and rough seas. After crossing the southern tip of Africa, Vasco da Gama sailed northward along the eastern African coast. He stopped at important trading ports such as Mozambique, Mombasa, and Malindi. At Malindi, on the East African coast, Vasco da Gama obtained the help of an experienced navigator who guided the fleet across the Indian Ocean. using monsoon winds. After a long and a difficult voyage across ocean, Vasco da Gama finally reached Calicut on the Malabar coast of India in May 1498. Calicut was an important spice trading center ruled by Zamorin. The arrival of Vasco da Gama created curiosity among local merchants and rulers because Europeans had never before reached India directly by sea in this manner. So earlier Europeans only used to come to India by by land routes, by crossing the Ottoman Empire, by paying Ottoman Empire taxes, or whichever empire was ruling in the Middle East and the Central Asia. But when the Ottoman Empire came about and when the Byzantine fell, what happened? Ottoman increased the taxes significantly, 100% tax, 200% tax, something like that. They doubled or tripled the taxes. And so the trade, which used to be very profitable for the Europeans, became impossible for them to carry on. Practically, it became impossible for them to make money out of that trade, because if they are going to pay 200% tax, then they will have to sell it at much higher prices in Europe, and then no one will buy, or their consumer the number of consumers will go down, and nobody likes to lose the market. So they were so desperate to find a route, a sea route from Cape of Good Hope. They had already discovered a sea route till Cape of Good Hope. Bartholomew Diaz had already discovered. But from Cape of Good Hope to India, finding a sea route was a big challenge. That is southernmost tip of Africa, and then finding till India. It's a big challenge, but Vasco da Gama was able to do it, and they landed in Calicut. And at that point of time, Calicut, it is in the western side of India. And at that point of time, Calicut was actually ruled by Zamorin. Zamorin used to rule Calicut, and he was surprised. Uh, he was very much surprised that how come have they. Calicut is actually in Kerala. Okay, Calicut is in Kerala, and it was being ruled by Zamorin, and Zamorin was very much surprised that how come they have come from sea this time, because at that point of time Indian rulers were not aware about deep sea expedition. They were not doing deep sea expedition, especially towards the western side. Even during the time of Chola, if it was done, it was only done towards the eastern side, southeastern side. It was never done towards the western side. So he was surprised. The arrival of Vasco da Gama created curiosity among the local merchants and rulers because Europeans had never before reached India directly by sea in this manner. Although Vasco da Gama was welcomed initially, trade relations did not become immediately successful. Arab merchants already active in Indian Ocean trade viewed the Portuguese as competitors and opposed them. The Portuguese also failed to bring luxury goods suitable for Indian markets, which reduced the success of their commercial mission. Despite these difficulties, Vasco da Gama voyage became a turning point in world history. His successful navigation proved that Europe and India could be connected directly through maritime routes. This changed global trade pattern permanently. The consequences of Vasco da Gama's journey were enormous. Portugal soon established trading centers and military bases across the Indian Ocean. The Portuguese later occupied places such as Goa, Cochin, Daman, and Diu. They were able to establish their colonies in this region. They gradually attempted to dominate the spice trade and maritime commerce in Indian Ocean. Vasco da Gama's voyage also opened the door for other European powers such as Dutch, English, and French. They will also follow the same route. They will also come to India following the same route to enter Asian trade and eventually establish colonial empires. When Vasco da Gama reached Calicut in 1498, it completely changed the history of India, Asia, and even Europe. Before this voyage, Europeans had no direct sea connection with India. Trade with India happened mainly through land routes, and Arab merchants controlled much of the sea trade. Goods like black pepper, cinnamon, cloves, silk, and fine cotton textiles were extremely valuable in Europe. But by the time they reached European markets through middlemen, their prices became extremely high. Portugal wanted to break this monopoly and establish direct trade with India. Vasco da Gama's successful voyage proved that Europe could directly reach India without the sea route around Africa. This discovery this discovery began a completely new phase of world history called Age of European colonial expansion. After Vasco da Gama returned to Portugal with spices and huge profits, the Portuguese crown realized the enormous commercial possibilities of India. As a result, more Portuguese fleet started arriving in the Indian Ocean. Initially, the Portuguese came mainly for spice trade, commercial profit, control over maritime trade routes. But very quickly, they understood that simple trade was not enough. The Indian Ocean already had a highly developed trading network dominated by Arab merchants, Gujarati traders, Persian traders, Egyptian traders. These groups saw Portuguese as dangerous competitors. The Portuguese therefore adopted an aggressive strategy. Instead of peacefully participating in trade, they adopted to establish naval domination over the Indian Ocean. The Portuguese used heavily armed ships equipped with cannons, something relatively new to the Indian Ocean warfare. They attacked Arab merchant ships, looted ports, and tried to force traders to buy license called cartas. Without Portuguese permission, the ships were often attacked. Now, what is this cartas? System of cartas? The cartas system was a naval pass system introduced by the Portugal in Indian Ocean after the arrival of Vasco da Gama. In the Indian context, it became one of the most important tools through which the Portuguese tried to control maritime trade, dominate coastal kingdoms, and establish their commercial empire in the Indian Ocean during the 60th century. The word cartas itself means a permit or pass. Any ship sailing in the Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal, or nearby waters often had to carry a Portuguese issued document. Without it, the Portuguese navy could seize the ship, confiscate goods, imprison merchants, or even sink the vessel. Before the Portuguese arrived, the Indian Ocean trade system was comparatively open. Arab merchants, Gujarati traders, Malay sailors, Tamils, Persians, and many other traded freely between East Africa, Arabia, Arabia, India, and Southeast Asia. Powerful ports like Calicut, Cochin, and Cambay were deeply connected through centuries of commercial networks. There was competition, but there was no single naval power monopolizing the sea routes. The Portuguese changed this entire structure after realizing that the direct control over land in India was difficult. Instead, they focused on controlling the sea. Under this system, ships traveling in the Indian Ocean had to buy a cartas from Portuguese authorities stationed at forts and ports such as Goa, Diu, and Cochin. The past mentioned details such as ship's route, type of cargo, owner's identity, destination, and sometimes even restrictions on carrying certain goods. Ships without the permit were considered illegal by the Portuguese Navy. Portuguese warship constantly patrolled an Indian Ocean searching for vessels violating these rules. The significance of the Carta system in India was enormous because it effectively turned the sea into a controlled commercial zone under Portuguese influence. This was not merely a taxation system, it was an assertion of sovereignty over international waters. The Portuguese were essentially declaring that nobody could trade freely in the Indian Ocean without their permission. This was revolutionary because no previous Indian ocean power had exercised such centralized naval control. Economically, Carta's system allowed the Portuguese to earn huge revenues. Merchants had to pay fees to obtain these passes. In addition, by deciding which ship could trade and which could not, Portugal gained indirect control over the flow of spices and luxury goods. They could weaken rivals and favor allies. Indian merchants, especially from Gujarat and Malabar coast, were heavily affected because their traditional trade freedom was reduced. The system also had deep political consequences in India. Coastal rulers who cooperated with the Portuguese often received military support and trade advantages, and those who resisted faced naval attacks and blockades. For example, the rulers of Calicut, particularly Zamorin, strongly opposed Portuguese domination because Calicut had long been a major center of Arab Indian trade. This conflict led to repeated war between the Portuguese and Zamorin of Calicut. So Zamorin of Calicut is the same ruler who is actually accepting the Portuguese to come, and because he's surprised, and because Portuguese has come with a lot of money, but when he eventually realizes that these Portuguese are making are basically surrounding our sea, surrounding our ocean, and they are declaring a monopoly in the ocean. So that led to a lot of conflict and wars between the Zamorin of Calicut and the Portuguese. On the other hand, rulers of places like Cochin sometimes allied with the Portuguese against the regional enemies, hoping to gain commercial benefit and military protection. Of course, India was very much divided at that point of time. There was no single understanding of an empire or nation, and the Portuguese exploited that, and they made a lot of money. That's what they did. Moving on. The border line which separates India and Pakistan is known as Red Cliff Line. Red Cliff Line. Red Cliff Line. The borderline separating India and Pakistan is known as Red Cliff Line. The line was created during the partition of British India in 1947 and was named after Cyril Redcliffe, the British lawyer, who was appointed to decimate the boundary between the newly created nation of India and Pakistan. When the British decided to partition India, separate boundaries commissions were formed in Bengal for Punjab and Bengal because these provinces had mixed Hindu and Muslim population. Cyril Radcliffe was given the difficult task of drawing the boundary in a very short period, despite having little prior knowledge of Indian geography, politics, or society. He arrived in India on 8 July 1947 and was given the extremely difficult task of demarcating the borders between India and Pakistan within only 5 weeks. The boundary was created under the provision of Mountbatten Plan announced on 3rd June 1947 by Louis Mountbatten. Cyril Radcliffe became the chairman of both Punjab Boundary Commission and Bengal Boundary Commission. These commissions were formed because the provinces of Punjab and Bengal had mixed population of Hindus, Muslims, and Sikh, and therefore had to be divided between two new dominions. The division was mainly based on religious population according to the 1941 census, though the administrative convenience, communication routes, railway lines, and canal system and economic consideration were also taken into account. The Radcliffe Line divided Punjab into West Punjab for Pakistan and East Punjab for India, while Bengal was divided into East Bengal for Pakistan and West Bengal for India. Important cities such as Lahore went to Pakistan while Amritsar remained in India. Kolkata remained in India while Chittagong became part of Pakistan. The district of Gurdaspur was awarded to India, which later became strategically important because it provided land access to Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan became independent on 14th August 1947 and India became independent on 15 August 1947. But the Radcliffe Award was officially announced only on 17 August 1947. Because the exact borders were not publicly known at the time of independence, enormous confusion, uncertainty, and spread among the population living in border regions. Millions of Hindus, Muslims, and Sikh suddenly found themselves on the wrong side of the borders, leading to panic, mass migration, and commercial violence. The partition caused one of the largest forced migration in world history. Around 10 to 15 million people crossed borders between India and Pakistan, while several lakh people lost their lives in riots, massacres, attacks on refugee caravans, and communal violence, especially in Punjab and Bangladesh. So it is Radcliffe Line drawn by Cyril Radcliffe, which divided India into India and Pakistan. Um, West Punjab went to Pakistan, East Punjab came to India, West Bengal came to India, and East Bengal went to Pakistan. At that point of time, East Pakistan, now it is Bangladesh. Okay. Which the following statement is correct in respect to Shak dynasty. Shak dynasty. Some kingdoms of Shak lasted for about 500 years, and the Shak were followed by the Kushans about 2200 years ago. So which is true? Both one and two. The statement regarding the Shak dynasty are correct. The Shak, also known as Indo-Scythians, were Central Asian tribes who entered northwestern India around the 2nd century BCE after being displaced by another nomadic group from Central Asia. They established several kingdoms in different parts of India, especially in the western and the northwestern regions. Some Shak kingdoms, particularly the western Kshatraps in the western India, lasted for nearly 500 years. Their rule continued approximately from the 1st century BCE to the 4th century CE. One of the most famous Shak ruler was Rudradaman the first, who is known for the Junagadh inscription written in Sanskrit. The second statement is also correct because the Shakas were followed by the Kushans around 2200 years ago. The Kushan Empire emerged after the Shak and became one of the most powerful empire in northern India and Central Asia. The Kushan were originally part of the Yuzi tribe from the Central Asia and are especially famous under the rulers such as Kanishka. The Kushans played an important role in expansion of trade along Silk Road, spread of Buddhism, development of Gandhar art, and cultural interaction between India, Central Asia, and Rome. So Shakas, some kingdoms of Shak even lasted for 500 years, and the Shakas were followed by the Kushans. After Shakas will come Kushan. About 2200 years ago, this change is taking place. And another name for the Shakas is Indo-Scythians. Indo-Scythian Empire. Okay. So these are the Shaks. Next. Battle of Buxar was fought in 1764. Option D, 1764. The Battle of Buxar was fought on 22nd October 1764 between British East India Company and a combined alliance of major Indian rulers at Buxar in present-day Bihar. This battle is considered one of the most decisive turning point in Indian history because it established the real political and military dominance of the British in India. To understand the Battle of Buxar properly, it is important to understand the events that followed the Battle of Plassey in 1757. In the Battle of Plassey, the British East India Company under Robert Clive defeated Siraj-ud-Daulah with the help of a conspiracy and betrayal by Mir Jafar. After Plassey, the British gained enormous influence over Bengal. The British installed Mir Jafar as the Nawab of Bengal because they expected him to remain loyal and dependent on the company. However, Mir Jafar soon became unable to satisfy the increasing financial demands of the British. The company constantly demanded money, gifts, territories, and trade privileges. As a result, the British replaced Mir Jafar with Mir Qasim in 1760. Mir Qasim was the son-in-law of Mir Jafar. Mir Qasim initially cooperated with the British but soon realized that company was interfering excessively in Bengal's administration and economy. One of the major causes of conflict was issue of trade privileges. The British officials used duty-free trade privileges granted by the Mughal emperor not only for company trade but also for the private trade. Indian merchants also had to pay taxes, while British traders often avoided them. This created huge economic losses for Bengal and unfair competition for Indian merchants. Mir Qasim tried to reform the administration and strengthen Bengal independence. He shifted his capital from Murshidabad to Munger. This is Munger to build a stronger military base away from the British influence. He recognized the army along modern lines and attempted to free himself from the company control. So Mir Qasim is shifting the capital from Murshidabad to Munger because Munger was a bit far away from the British control, and he realized that Murshidabad is completely in the control of the Britishers. So if I want to make any changes in the administration, if I want to do things as per my plan, then I will not be able to do it in Murshidabad because it falls completely in the hand of Britishers, and they will be able to immediately launch a military expedition on me, and they will be able to take all the power away from me. So he changed the capital from Murshidabad to Munger to bring a strong military base away from the British influence. He recognized the army along modern lines and he reorganized the army along modern lines and attempted to free himself from company control. To create equality in trade, Mir Qasim abolished internal duties for all traders, both Indian and Europeans. However, the British opposed this because it threatened their commercial advantage. Conflict soon turned into open war between Mir Qasim and the British. After suffering defeats, Mir Qasim fled and formed an alliance with Shuja-ud-Daulah and Shah Alam II. This alliance was extremely important because it had united three major powers against the British East India Company. The combined Indian forces decided to challenge the growing British power militarily. The final confrontation took place at Buxar on 22nd October 1764. The British army was commanded by Major Hector Munro. Although the Allied Indian forces were numerically much larger, the British army possessed better discipline, organization, training, and artillery. During the battle, the company forces fought in a coordinated and disciplined manner, while the alliance suffered from lack of unity and strategic coordination. The British achieved a decisive victory. The British, the defeat at Buxar had enormous consequences for Indian history. Unlike the Battle of Plassey, which was won mainly through conspiracy and betrayal, the Battle of Buxar had clearly demonstrated the military superiority of the British over Indian rulers. After the victory, the British became the most powerful political force in eastern India. The consequence of the battle became official through the Treaty of Allahabad in 1765. So, Battle of Buxar is happening in 1764. Treaty of Allahabad is happening in 1765, signed by Robert Clive. Under this treaty, Shah Alam II granted Diwani rights to the English East India Company. Who is Shah Alam II? Shah Alam II is the Mughal ruler. So he is granting the Diwan right to the British India Company. That means British East India Company can collect revenue from Bengal. The company obtained the right to collect revenue from Bengal, Bihar, Odisha, and Bengal, Bihar, and Odisha. Company can even collect revenue now. Shuja-ud-Dawla had to pay a heavy indemnity. Shuja-ud-Dawla had to pay a heavy indemnity means Shuja-ud-Dawla had to pay a lot of money for all the losses that have been suffered by the Britishers. Awadh became a buffer state between British and Afghan threats, and the Mughal emperor became financially dependent on the British. The Diwani rights were especially important because they gave company the control over Bengal's enormous wealth and revenue sources. This transformed the British East India Company from a trading cooperation into a territorial and political power. Bengal at that time was one of the richest provinces in India. The revenue collected from Bengal allowed the British to maintain armies, finance future wars, expand across India, defeat other Indian powers. Thus, the Battle of Buxar laid the foundation of British East India Empire in India. Many historians consider Buxar even more important than Plassey because after Buxar, British gained not only just influence but actual administrative and financial control. So this is Battle of Buxar, fought in 1764 between English East India Company under the leadership of Major Hector Munro and three Indian empires. What are those three Indian empires? Awadh, which was being led by Shuja-ud-Dawla, Mughals, which was being led by Shah Alam II, and Bengal, which was being led by Mir Qasim. Which of the following statement is correct in respect to the Prashastis and land grants? Prashastis were composed by learned Brahmins. Kings often awarded Brahmins by grants of land which they recorded on copper plates. Yes, both are correct. Both are correct. Both statements regarding Prashastis and land grant are historically correct in ancient and medieval India. I have to make it a bit bigger. Yes. Both 1 and 2 are correct. Both statements regarding Prashastis and land grants are historically correct in ancient and early medieval India. Prashastis were inscriptions written in praise of king, ruler, and their achievement. These compositions were usually prepared by learned Brahmins and court poets who highlighted the bravery, victories, generosity, lineage, and qualities of the rulers. Prashastis were often written in highly decorative Sanskrit and engraved on stone pillars, temples, walls, or copper plates. One of the most famous example of this is Allahabad Prashasti, composed by Hari Sen. For whom is he composing? He is the court poet of Samudragupta, so he is composing for Samudragupta. The second statement is also correct because king frequently granted land to Brahmins, temples, monasteries, and religious institutions as reward or act of religious merit. These land grants were commonly recorded on copper plates, known as copper plate inscriptions. Such land grants often included tax-free villages, agricultural land, or rights over revenue collection. These inscriptions provide valuable information about administration, economy, society, taxation, local governance, and religious patronage in ancient India. Land grants became especially common during the Gupta and post-Gupta period and contributed to the growth of Brahminical influence and regional political structure. So this is Prashasti and land grants by the king to the people, to the Brahmins especially. Okay, moving on. Try this question. The word India came from Indus. The word India came from the Indus, called dash in Sanskrit. What is Indus called in Sanskrit? Very easy question. Hmm? In Sanskrit, Indus is known as Sindhu, Sindhu Nadi, Sindhu River. The word India is derived from the river Indus, which is called Sindhu in Sanskrit. In ancient India, the word Sindhu referred mainly to river Indus, one of the most important rivers of northwest region of Indian subcontinent. The Persians who came into contact with this region pronounced Sindhu as Hindu. They could not pronounce Sa, so they, instead of saying Sa, they said Ha, and Sindhu became Hindu because Persian language often says S into H. Later, Greeks adopted the term from Persian and used the word Indos or Indus from the river and surrounding land from the Greek. This from this Greek usage, the name India eventually developed. So first the Persians came and instead of saying Sindhu, they said Hindu because the Persians in the Persian language often changed S sounded into H. Later, Greeks adopted the term from Persians and used the word Indos. Right? The Persians used instead of saying India, they instead of saying in Hindu, they were saying Indos, Hindu, Indos, and Indos became Indus for the river and surrounding land. From the Greek usage, the name India eventually developed. So, thus, the modern name India has linguistic roots connected to the Sanskrit word Sindhu, the Persian word Hindu, and the Greek word Indus. Okay. So the actual name that we gave to Indus was Sindhu. Sindhu. Okay. Next. Which dynasty's bronze statues were made from using lost wax technique? So it is the Chola dynasty. The bronze statue made using the lost wax techniques are most famously associated with the Chola dynasty. The Chola rulers ruled large parts of South India between 9th and 13th centuries and became renowned for their achievements in administration, temple architecture, maritime trade, and especially bronze sculpture. The Cholas rulers patronized art and religion on a large scale, leading to the direct development of some of the finest bronze images in Indian history. These sculptures mainly depicted Hindu deities such as Shiva, Vishnu, Parvati, and various forms of divine figures worshipped in temples. Among all Chola bronze, the most famous is the image of Shiva as Nataraj, which presents the cosmic dance of the creation and destruction. The Chola artisans used lost wax techniques, also known as cere perdue method. In this process, sculptors first prepared a detailed model of the desired figure using wax. The wax model was then covered carefully with layers of clay to create a mold. When the mold was heated, the wax melted and flowed out through small openings, leaving behind a hollow cavity inside the clay structure. Molten bronze was then poured into hollow mold. After cooling, the clay covering was broken, revealed the final bronze statue, which was then polished and refined with intricate details. Because the mold had to be broken after casting, each bronze sculpture became unique and could not be exactly duplicated. This technique required exceptional artistic skills and precision. The Chola bronzes became famous for their natural body posture, graceful movement, fine ornamentation, emotional expression, technical perfection. These statues were not merely decorative artwork but played an important role in temple worship and religious rituals. Many bronze images were carried during the temple procession and ceremonial festivals. The development of Chola bronze sculpture reflected the high level of artistic and metallurgical knowledge achieved in medieval South India. Even today, Chola bronzes are regarded as masterpieces of Indian art and are admired worldwide for their beauty, craftsmanship, and religious symbolism. So, lost wax technique is being used to create bronze statues by the Cholas. Chola. Okay. Hmm. Prithviraj III defeated an Afghan ruler named Dash in 1191. So in 1191, Prithviraj III is defeating Muhammad Ghori, Sultan Muhammad Ghori. And then Muhammad Ghori would come back in 1192 and he would defeat Prithviraj III, who is also known as Prithviraj Chauhan, and he would establish Delhi Sultanate, the Ghurid Empire. And when he would die, he would give all his he would appoint Qutbuddin Aibak as his governor of that region. And when Muhammad Ghori would die, Qutbuddin Aibak would declare freedom, independence from the Ghurid Empire, and he would start Sirab dynasty or Mamluk dynasty. So Sultan Muhammad Ghori, Prithviraj Chauhan defeated Sultan Muhammad Ghori in 1119 and during the first battle of Tarain. The battle was fought between Prithviraj Chauhan and Muhammad Ghori near Tarain in present-day Haryana. Muhammad Ghori was attempting to expand his control in northwestern in northern India, while Prithviraj Chauhan was one of the most powerful Rajput rulers of that period. In the first battle of Tarain, the Rajput forces defeated Muhammad Ghori decisively, and Ghori himself was injured during the battle and forced to retreat. However, the conflict did not end there. Muhammad Ghori returned the next year with a better prepared army and defeated Prithviraj Chauhan in 1192 during the second battle of Tarain. All the battles of Muhammad Ghori. Muhammad Ghori, Muhammad of Ghor, also known as Muhammad Ghori or Muiz al-Din Muhammad, was one of the most important invaders in Indian history because unlike earlier raiders such as Mahmud Ghazni, he did not come only to loot India. His main objective was permanent political expansion. The battles fought by him completely changed the political structure of North India and laid the foundation for later Delhi Sultanate. His military campaigns happened mainly between 1175 CE and 1206 CE. Muhammad Ghori first entered the Indian region in 1175 CE. His earliest campaign was against Multan. At that time, Multan was controlled by Ismaili Shia rulers whom the Ghurids considered politically and religiously dangerous. Ghuri attacked Multan, successfully captured it. This victory was important because it gave him an entry point into the Indian subcontinent. After Multan, he moved towards Uk and captured it as well. These early victories strengthened his confidence and secured the lower Indus region for future expansion. In 1178 CE, Muhammad Ghori attempted to advance deeper into India through Gujarat. The campaign led to the Battle of Kayadara, also called as Battle of Gujarat. At that time, Gujarat was being ruled by the Chalukya dynasty under the young ruler Maharaja II, Mool Raja II, though the administration was heavily managed by Queen Naike Devi. Ghori expected an easy victory, but Rajput forces defeated him badly near Mount Abu. This was one of the few major defeats of Muhammad Ghori. His army suffered heavily because of exhaustion, difficult desert routes, and strong Rajput resistance. This defeat taught Muhammad Ghori an important lesson. Entering India through the western desert route was difficult. After this, he changed his strategy and focused on Punjab instead. After Gujarat, Ghori spent some years consolidating power in Afghanistan and Northwest. He understood the Punjab was the key to conquering North India because it connected Central Asia directly with Indo-Gangetic plains. During this period, Punjab was controlled by the weakening Ghaznavid Empire. In 1179 CE, Ghori captured Peshawar. Then in 1181 CE, he attacked Lahore but could not capture it immediately. Finally, in 1186 CE, he defeated the last Ghaznavid ruler, Khusrau Malik, and annexed Lahore completely. This was extremely significant because it ended Ghaznavid power forever and gave Ghori direct control over Punjab. Once Punjab was secured, Muhammad Ghori came into direct conflict with the powerful Rajput kingdoms of North India, especially the Chahamana dynasty, ruled by the Prithviraj Chauhan. This rivalry produced the famous battles of Tarain. The first battle of Tarain took place in 1191 CE near Tarain, close to present-day Haryana. Ghori attacked a strategic fortress of Bhatinda, which belonged to Prithviraj Chauhan. After capturing it, Ghori faced the combined forces led by Prithviraj. The Rajput had strong cavalry and elephant forces. During the battle, Govind Rai, who was Prithviraj's relative, seriously injured Ghori with a spear attack. Ghori's army became disorganized and Ghurid forces suffered defeat. Muhammad Ghori barely escaped alive. This was another major setback for him. However, Ghori learned from his defeat. He carefully studied Rajput warfare and prepared for revenge. Unlike many Indian rulers who often considered victory final, Ghori focused on long-term military planning. In 1192 CE, he returned with a much larger and more disciplined mounted cavalry forces. This led to the Second Battle of Tarain, one of the most decisive battles in Indian history. Prithviraj Chauhan again led the Rajput confederacy. Initially, the Rajput fought strongly, but Ghori used fast-moving mounted archers and tactical threats to exhaust the Rajput army. Once the Rajput formation weakened, the Ghurid cavalry launched coordinated attack and multiple sides. The Rajputs were defeated completely. Prithviraj Chauhan was captured and later killed. So this is Prithviraj Chauhan and Muhammad Ghori's battles, known as Battle of Tarain. Battle of Tarain. Answer to this question: Prithviraj III defeated an Afghan ruler named Sultan Muhammad Ghori in 1191. And in 1192, Muhammad Ghori will defeat Prithviraj III. Okay. Which of the following sites of the Harappan civilization is located near Bolan Pass? Near Bolan Pass. This is Mehergarh. Mehergarh. So if you see this here, this is Bolan Pass and this is Mehergarh. So you will need to have a very good understanding of geography and all the sites of all the Harappan sites and what kind of major geographical locations they are situated next to. Okay. So these are important sites: Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Rakhigarhi, Kalibangan, Lothal, Dholavira, Gaveriwala, Chanudaro, Sukkur, Potdiji, Banavali, Alamgir, Manda, and Shortugai. And these are the places they are located in. You must know Harappa, you must know Mohenjo-daro, you must know Lothal, Kalibangan, Rakhigarhi. These are very, very important. Shortugai is in Afghanistan. Shortugai is the northern tip of Harappan civilization. Okay. Lothal used to be the dockyard where a lot of ships were kept. Okay. Mohenjo-daro is the largest one. Now Dholavira has become largest because excavation in Dholavira are going on, while Pakistan does not carry on excavation at that scale. So now Dholavira has become the largest, but Mohenjo-daro is considered the most flourishing, the most prosperous region, the most prosperous city. Okay. So Mehergarh is an archaeological site located near Bolan Pass in present-day Balochistan, Pakistan. The Bolan Pass was historically an important route connecting the Indian subcontinent with Central Asia and regions to the northwest, which made Mehergarh strategically significant in early human settlement history. Mehergarh is considered one of the earliest known archaeological and settled villages in South Asia, and is extremely important for understanding the origins of civilization in the Indian subcontinent. The site dates back to around 7000 BCE and belongs mainly to the Neolithic and Chalcolithic phases. Historians and archaeologists regard Mehergarh as pre-Harappan settlement that helped lay foundation for the later Indus Valley civilization. Okay. So very close to Bolan Pass is Mehergarh, which is again in Pakistan. Okay. Moving on. Partition of Bengal happened in 1905. Very easy. 1905. We have studied it so many times. The partition of Bengal was carried out in 1905 during the viceroyalty of Lord Curzon. So who's the viceroy? It is Lord Curzon. The partition officially came into effect on 16 October 1905 and became one of the most important political event in the history of Indian subcontinent in Indian national movement. At the beginning of the 20th century, Bengal was the largest province under the British rule in India. It included not only present-day West Bengal and Bangladesh but also Bihar, Odisha and Assam. The British government argued that such a large province had become difficult to administer efficiently. On this basis, Lord Curzon announced the division of Bengal for administrative convenience. Under the partition of Bengal, and under the partition plan, Bengal was divided into two parts. One was Eastern Bengal and Assam, with its capital at Dhaka, which had a Muslim majority population. The other part was Western Bengal, with Calcutta as its capital and a Hindu majority population. Although although the British presented the partition as an administrative measure, Indian nationalists strongly opposed it. They believed that the actual objective of the British was to weaken the growing nationalist movement in Bengal through the policy of divide and rule. By separating Hindus and Muslims into different administrative units, the British hoped to reduce political unity among the Indians. The partition of Bengal created massive public anger and led to the widespread protest across India. It gave rise to the Swadeshi movement, which encouraged Indians to boycott British goods and promote the use of Indian made products. Public meetings, demonstration, strike, and nationalist campaigns were organized to a large scale. Nationalist education movement also dependent as Indians decided and tried to create educational institution free from British control. Leaders such as Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Bipin Chandra Pal, Lala Lajpat Rai played an important role in spreading anti-partition agitation and nationalist ideas. The movement transformed Indian nationalism by bringing students, women, workers, and middle class groups into political activity on a much larger scale. It also marked the growth of extremist nationalism within the freedom movement. Because of the intense opposition from the continuous agitation, the British government finally decided to cancel the partition in 1911. So 1905, under the viceroyalty of Lord Curzon, the partition of Bengal is happening, and in 1911, the partition of Bengal is also getting cancelled. Why? Because there was a widespread Swadeshi movement which had been which had gathered a lot of pace under the leadership of Lal Bal Pal trio, Lala Lajpat Rai, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and Bipin Chandra Pal. These three individuals really opposed the partition of Bengal, and they were able to create a nationwide movement in the name of Swadeshi movement, wherein the British made goods were boycotted and the Indian goods were promoted. So this was partition of Bengal and the retaliation of Indian, and because of such retaliation by Indians, the Britishers were suffering losses, or they were not able to make as much profit as they had expected. So in 1911, they cancelled this partition, and the partition was held. Partition was done on the basis of religious division, communal division, right? That's what Britishers did in India. Next. In which year was India House established by Shyamji Verma? When was India House established? So India House was established in 1905. It is also one of the retaliation of the partition of Bengal. India House was established in 1905 by Shyamji Krishna Verma in London. It became one of the important centers of Indian revolutionary nationalism outside India during the early phase of the freedom struggle. Shyamji Krishna Verma was a national thinker, scholar, and political activist who strongly opposed British colonial rule in India. He founded India House mainly to provide accommodation and support for Indian students staying in Britain, but it also developed into a center for spreading nationalism and anti-colonial ideas. India House attracted many politically active Indian students and revolutionaries who believed British rule could not be ended only through petition and constitutional methods. The organization became associated with revolutionary nationalism and promoted the idea of complete independence from the British rule. Among the important revolutionary connected with the India House were Vijay Damodar Savarkar and Savarkar and Madan Lal Dhingra. India House also became known for publishing nationalist literature and criticizing British imperial policies in India. Meeting, political discussions, and revolutionary activities were organized there, making it an influential center for anti British political thought among the Indians living abroad. The British government became increasingly suspicious of India House movement. It encouraged India House movement because it encouraged revolutionary ideas and militant nationalism. Its activities attracted the greater attention after Madanlal Dhingra assassinated British official Curzon Willie in London in 1909. After this incident, the British authorities intensified surveillance and pressured against revolutionary groups associated with India House. Although its active role declined afterwards, India House remained historically significant because it helped spread revolutionary nationalism among Indians abroad, abroad, abroad and inspired many young freedom fighters during the Indian national and independence movement. Next, who among the following performed the ritual called Hiranyagarbha? Hiranyagarbha. Hiranyagarbha was actually performed by the people. Hiranyagarbha is actually a yagya, which was supposed to be performed by people who belong to the lower caste, so that they can uplift their caste and they can become kshatriyas. So let's say if an individual becomes the king, he has all the military capacity to become the king. He becomes the king, but if he does not belong to the kshatriya varn, then he will not be accepted by the people. He will not be accepted by the Brahmins, and he will not, and he will always be at a clash with the people. He will always be clashing with the people that the people are not accepting him as the king. So a ritual was created called the Hiranyagarbha, wherein if an individual who belongs to lower caste, he becomes the king, he performs this particular yagya, he will be considered a Kshatriya. Okay. So who performed it? Danti Durg. Danti Durg belonged to Rashtrakuta dynasty. Danti Durg. Danti Durg belonged to the Rajputa dynasty. Danti Durg performed the ritual known as Hiranyagarbha. The Hiranyagarbha ritual was important ancient Brahminical ceremony associated with royal legitimacy and social status. The term Hiranyagarbha literally means golden womb. In this ritual, the ruler symbolically underwent a rebirth through a golden vessel, representing spiritual and social purification. After the ceremony, the king was regarded as being reborn with higher Kshatriya status and greater political legitimacy. Why was this ritual so popular? Between 500 CE and 1000 CE, post Gupta rulers underwent massive political and social fragmentation. The Hiranyagarbha ritual became widely popular across the subcontinent because it served three crucial functions. Number first, it solved the legal Kshatriya shortage. Ancient Indian code, Dharma Shastra, insisted that only individual born in the Kshatriya warrior world had the legitimate right to collect taxes, command armies, and rule as kings. So imagine if a ruler becomes the king because he has the military capacity, but he does not belong to the Kshatriya class. He belongs to a lower class. The people will not pay him taxes because in Dharma Shastra it is written that only a Kshatriya has the power, has the right to collect taxes, command armies, and rule as king. So the people will always be rebelling because they have now reasons to rebel. It is going against their existence. It is going against their existential beliefs. So this is why Hiranyagarbha Yagya was created. In reality, many rising warlords and powerful agrarian chiefs, Samantas, were from lower caste and tribal backgrounds. Hiranyagarbha provided peaceful legal loophole. It was a loophole basically. It allowed men of any background, such as Dantidurg of Rashtrakuta, to bypass the birth limitation and secure absolute loyalty of their subject. Second, the mutual alliance between the king and the priest, Kshatriyas and the Brahmins. The popularity of the ritual relied heavily on transactional relationship between the new ruling class and the Brahmin clergy. For the king, they received instant social elevation, divine justification for their rule, and political backing from the influential religious network. If the Dantidurg performs Hiranyagarbha Yagya, so all the Brahmins who already have a lot of who are seen as an important class by the people, by the normal farmers and laborers, even to this day, most of the Brahmins, most of the people who are the religious scholars, they are seen by with a lot of respect. So now if Dantidur perform the Hiranyagarbha Yajna and he gives a lot of, and to perform this particular yajna, he will have to pay a lot of money to the Brahmin. He will have to give a lot of land to the Brahmin, to the influential Brahmin. And that Brahmin will tell the people that yes, now this guy is Kshatriya and he can rule over you. And that will basically create an alliance between the king and the priest, a transactional alliance. Both are getting benefited. For the priest, the Brahmin class received tremendous wealth, splitting a massive golden vessel among local clergy vastly increased their economic power and land holding capacity. So for the priest, they are getting a lot of wealth, and the king is getting social elevation, and he already has the military. So now with military as well as socially, he has the military to become the king, and now he is socially accepted to stay the king, to stay as the king. So both are getting benefited. Then proclamation of the empire and independence. The ritual evolved into a supreme symbol of a kingdom's wealth, dominance, and complete independence from old overlords. Performing it signaled that a king had conquered enough territory and amassed enough wealth to casually give away immense amount of gold. So it was not a cheap affair. It was a very costly affair. He will have to probably distribute gold, vessels, and tremendous amount of territories, land, tremendous amount of gold coins to the priests, hundreds of priests, probably all the Brahmins in his region. So it was a very costly affair. So if a king is doing this, that means he is very wealthy and he can afford to do this. So it was also a proclamation of the empire and economic sovereignty for the king. Notable historical figures like early Chalukya kings Pulkeshin I and various Chola and Pandya kings performed the ritual specifically after major military triumph to formalize their sovereignty. So many other kings other than Dantidurga are also performing it. Remember the name because as you can see, the question has directly been asked which one of the following king performed Hiranyagarbha Yajna. So next time, these names can also be in the option. Pulkeshin I, Pandya kings, Chola kings. So remember that. So Dantidurg is the right answer, and Dantidurg belongs to Rashtrakoot dynasty. All right, Rashtrakoot dynasty is coming from the from Deccan India, Deccan, Maharashtra, and Madhya Pradesh, all that region. Okay, next. Which one of the following acts of the British Parliament stated that a member of the British Cabinet was appointed Secretary of State for India? When was Secretary of State of India post came about? So it came in Government of India Act 1858, right after 1857 revolt. Okay. Government of India Act 1858. When the British government decided to abolish East India Company's rule, they did not abolish East India Company. East India Company was abolished in 1874, but they abolished the rule, the company rule, and they decided to acknowledge that yes, now we are the rulers. The Queen, the Crown is the direct ruler. So Government of India Act 1858, the Government of India Act 1858 passed by the British Parliament stated that a member of the British Cabinet would be appointed as Secretary of State for India. The act was passed after the revolt of 1857, which exposed serious weakness in the administration of the British East India Company. After the revolt, the British government decided to end the rule of the East India Company and bring India directly under the control of the British Crown. Under the Government of India Act of 1858, the rule of the East India Company was abolished. The power transferred directly to the British Crown. The office of the Governor General continued, but the Governor General also became the Viceroy of India. He got to be known as Viceroy of India because the Viceroy of India basically meant the direct representative of the crown. He became the direct representative of the crown. The act also created the powerful office of Secretary of State of India, who became a member of British cabinet and was responsible for controlling administration for Britain. The Secretary of State was assisted by Council of India, consisting of experienced officials. The first Viceroy of India after the act was Lord Canning. So Lord Canning was already the Governor General, and as soon as the act came from Governor General, he became Viceroy. The Government of India Act of 1858 therefore marked the beginning of direct crown rule. Direct crown rule. So if the question is asked, who was the first Secretary of State, then what will be the answer? Because that can be asked if they are asking about Secretary of State. Next time they can ask who was the Secretary of State. So the first Secretary of State was Lord Stanley. Lord Stanley. His name was Edward Henry Stanley, 15th Earl of Derby. Was the first Secretary of State for India. He was appointed for this cabinet level position in August 1858, following the passage of Government of India Act, which transferred the political administration of India from the East India Company directly to the British Crown. So Lord Stanley is the first Secretary of State appointed in 1858. Okay. Against whom was the Battle of Plassey fought by the English company led by Robert Clive? Very easy. Mir Jafar. Mir Jafar is the commander-in-chief of Sirajud-Dowlah. So Sirajud-Dowlah. But then Mir Jafar will side with Robert Clive, and he will actually backstab Sirajud-Dowlah. Right. So this will be known as the conspiracy of Plassey. Sirajud-Dowlah. The Battle of Plassey was fought between the British East India Company led by Robert Clive and Sirajud-Dowlah, the Nawab of Bengal. The battle took place on 23rd June 1757 at Plassey in Bengal and became one of the most decisive turning points in Indian history because it marked the beginning of the British political dominance in India. During the mid-18th century, Bengal was one of the richest provinces in India because of its agriculture, trade, textile, production, commercial prosperity. The British East India Company had received a trading privilege in Bengal, but over time the company began misusing these privileges and increasingly interfered in the internal matters of the Nawab. The British also strengthened their military fortification at Calcutta without the Nawab's permission, which increased the tensions with Sirajud-Dowlah. Sirajud-Dowlah opposed the growing influence of the British and attempted to assert his authority over Bengal. Conflict intensified when the British refused to fully cooperate with the Nawab's order. In response, Sirajud-Dowlah captured Calcutta from the British in 1756. The British then organized a military campaign under Robert Clive to recover their position in Bengal. Before the battle, Robert Clive secretly entered into conspiracies with several important officials in the Nawab's court, especially Mir Jafar, who was the commander of Sirajud-Dowlah's army. The British promised to make Mir Jafar the Nawab of Bengal if he supported them against Sirajud-Dowlah. When the Battle of Plassey began, Nawab's army was numerically much larger than British forces. However, Mir Jafar and several other commanders betrayed Sirajud-Dowlah by refusing to actively participate in fighting. Because of his betrayal, Sirajud-Dowlah's army became ineffective and disorganized, allowing the British to achieve victory despite having a small force. After the defeat, Sirajud-Dowlah attempted to escape, but he was captured and later killed. The British installed Mir Jafar as the Nawab of Bengal and gained enormous political and economic influence over the province. The Battle of Plassey became historically significant because it transformed the British East India Company from a trading organization into a political power in India. The immense wealth of Bengal, the immense wealth of Bengal gave the company financial strength to further expand further across the subcontinent. The victory also laid the foundation for later British expedition and colonial rule in India. Okay, so this is 17. Okay, this is not 51, this is 57. 1757. It happened in 1757. Okay. Next, the first session of All India Depressed Classes Congress was held at Dash in 1930. All India Depressed Class Congress was held in Nagpur. Nagpur. The first session of All India Depressed Classes Congress was held at Nagpur in 1930. The organization was associated with the movement for the right and upliftment of the depressed classes, especially under the leadership of B.R. Ambedkar. During early 20th century, socially oppressed communities faced severe discrimination, untouchability, exclusion from education, denial of temple entry, and lack of political representation. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar emerged as the most important leader, advocating social equality, political right, education, and representation of these communities. The All India Depressed Class Congress became an important platform for raising demand related to political safeguard, separate electorates, social equality, educational opportunity, representation in government services. The session at the session at Nagpur reflected the growing political consciousness and organized mobilization of the depressed classes during the freedom movement period. Okay, so this is Nagpur, all right, in 1930. And who is doing it? B.R. Ambedkar. B.R. Ambedkar. Obviously, B.R. Ambedkar will do it. He was the leader of the depressed classes. Very easy to learn. Next. Which of the following territories in South India and North were made part of the Chola kingdom by the successors of the ruler Vijayalaya? Which of the following territories of the South and the North were made part of the Chola kingdom by the successors of the ruler Vijayalaya? Answer this question. The Pallava and the Cheras. The successor of Vijayalaya Chola expanded the Chola dynasty by incorporating the territory of Pallavas and the Cheras. Why? Because these were the neighbors of Cholas, the neighbors. Vijayalaya Chola founded the medieval Chola dynasty in the 9th century after capturing Thanjavur. His successor, especially the rulers such as Adityavan, Parantakavan, Rajarajavan, Rajendravan, greatly expanded the Chola power across South India. The Pallavas, who ruled northern in Tamil Nadu with their capital at Kanchipuram, were defeated and their territories were absorbed into the Chola kingdom. Similarly, the Chola extended their authority towards the southwest and brought Chera territories of Kerala under their influence. Though these conquests, the Cholas emerged as one of the strongest empires in South India. They developed powerful administration, naval strength, overseas trade, and magnificent temple architecture under the Raja Rajadavan and Rajendravan. Okay, so this is the Cholas. So who are they defeating? The Cholas will obviously defeat the Pallavas and the Cheras. Pallavas and the Cheras. Obviously, how can they defeat Rashtrakutas all of a sudden? They are not directly, their boundaries still not directly touching. Vijayalaya's empire's boundary did not touch Rashtrakutas. How can they go to Satavahanas, which is in the Deccan and the north, right? So this is the answer. Next. Which one of the following, which act allowed the government to confiscate the assets of a newspaper in case of publishing anything objectionable? Very easy, we have already discussed it. The answer has to be Vernacular Press Act 1878. 1878. The Vernacular Press Act 1878. The Vernacular Press Act of 1878 was passed by the British government during the Viceroyalty of Lord Lytton to control and suppress Indian origin papers and criticizing British colonial rules. The Act gave the government power to confiscate printing press, property, and assets of newspaper if they published anything considered objectionable, seditious, and anti-government. During the second half of the 9th century, newspapers published in Indian languages such as Hindi, Bengali, Urdu, Marathi, and Tamil were becoming increasingly important in spreading political awareness and nationalist ideas among the Indians. Many editors and journalists openly criticized British economic exploitation, administrative injustice, and racial discrimination and oppressive colonial policies. The British government became worried that vernacular press were encouraging anti-British sentiments and political unrest among the Indian population. To suppress such criticism, the Vernacular Press Act was introduced in 1878. The press mainly targeted newspapers published in Indian languages, while English language newspapers, many of which were owned by Europeans, were generally exempt from this provision. Because of this discriminatory nature, Indians strongly opposed this act. Under the law, local magistrates received extensive power to take action against the newspapers. They could demand security deposit from the publishers, confiscate printing machinery, seize publications, and shut down newspapers without normal judicial procedure. If any content was considered dangerous to the British authority, the government did not need to provide detailed legal justification before taking action. Because the Act severely restricted freedom of expression and freedom of press, Indian nationalists called it the Gagging Act. The law created widespread resentment among the journalists, intellectuals, and political leaders. Many newspapers attempted to avoid restriction by changing their language of publication or using indirect criticism against the government. One famous example of the newspaper Amrita Bazar Patrika, which converted overnight from Bengali newspaper into an English newspaper to escape the provision of this act. The Vernacular Press Act became an important symbol of British repression and colonial censorship in India. It demonstrated that British government reached growing influence, feared British government feared the growing influence of Indian public opinion and nationalist journalism. The act was eventually repealed in 1882 during the viceroyalty of Lord Ripon, who followed a comparatively liberal policy towards Indian press. That's not important. So what's important is Vernacular Press Act 1878. You must remember that it came out only against it was a discriminatory law, also known as the Gagging Act. What are the things that were under this act? That if the British government feels, if basically the district magistrate of that region feels, and obviously the district magistrate will be a British person, if he feels that anything which is being printed in any vernacular newspaper, any newspaper of the language which is being spoken by the Indians, local language, any local language, and is printing anything objectionable against the British government, then they can shut that newspaper immediately. And not only that, they can even ask for the deposit money. They can even ask for the deposit money, right? Where was that? Um, and they also did not need to provide any detailed legal justification why they are doing this. So that is the reason why this was known as the Gagging Act. Okay. So remember that. And all the English newspaper were exempt from it. Why was it exempt? Why were the English newspaper exempt? The first reason is because the English spoke English language, so they could figure out what they are writing. And secondly, because most of the English newspapers were being owned by the Britishers, so they did not want to harm their own businessman. This was the reason. So Vernacular Press Act 1878 came under the viceroyalty of Lord Lytton, repealed under the viceroyalty of Lord Ripon. Next, Ashoka appointed Dash to solve the social problems in the region. Dhamma Mahamat. Dhamma Mahamat. Ashoka appointed Dhamma Mahamat. Ashoka appointed official known as Dhamma Mahamat to deal with the social problems and promote welfare throughout his empire. These officials became an important part of Ashoka's administration after the Kalinga War, which deeply affected him and led him to adopt the policy of Dhamma. After witnessing the destructive and suffering caused by the Kalinga War, Ashoka turned towards principles such as non-violence, compassion, tolerance, and moral conduct, and public welfare. He wanted these values to be followed throughout the Mauryan Empire and therefore introduced the policy of Dhamma. To spread and supervise this policy effectively, Ashoka created the post Dhamma Mahamat. These officials were especially appointed to look after the moral and social welfare of the people. Their responsibility included promoting harmony among different religion communities, helping the poor and elderly, ensuring humane treatment of prisoners, encouraging ethical behavior, and spreading Ashoka's ethics of compassion and tolerance. The Dhamma Mahamat traveled to different parts of the empire and acted as officer concerned with public welfare and moral administration. They worked not only among the common people, but also among various religious groups to maintain peace and social harmony within the empire. The institution of Dhamma Mahamat reflected Ashoka's attempt to combine political administration and ethical governance. Through these officers, Ashoka tried to create a state based not merely on military power, but also on moral principles and welfare-oriented rule. The other options are incorrect because Samharth was mainly a revenue officer responsible for taxation and finance. Nyayadhish referred to the judicial authority or judge, and Amati was a general term used for the officers or high administrative officials. Samharth refers to important financial revenue officer in ancient Indian administration, especially described in the texts such as Arthashastra. The Samarth was mainly responsible for Samarth was mainly responsible for tax collection and revenue administration, state income, and financial supervision. He was essentially the chief revenue collector of the kingdom and had no special rule relating to the solving social problem under Ashoka. Nyayadhish is the judicial officer, means judge or the judicial authority, and Nyayadhish was also associated with the administration of judge, legal dispute, punishment, judge judicial decision. The position was connected with courts and law and order rather than public welfare or social reform. Amatya is basically ministers or high-ranking officials in bureaucracy. That is Amatya. So these officers, these cannot be the answer. The answer is Dhamma Mahamat. And this is an exclusive position created by Ashoka. This did not exist before Ashoka. This did not exist under Chandragupta Maurya. This did not exist under Bindusar. This existed under Ashoka because he became very passionate about Dham that he called, which was the basically most of the beliefs were taken from Buddhist beliefs. And before him, the Mauryas, Chandragupta Maurya actually followed Jainism, and Bindusar actually followed Ajivika. So Ashoka is the first Mauryan ruler to follow Buddhism after the War of Kalinga. Next, which one of the following revolutionaries? He stated during his trial that he did not wish to glorify the cult of bomb and pistols, but wanted a revolution society. Bhagat Singh. Bhagat Singh. Bhagat Singh stated during his trial that revolution does not necessarily involve sanguinary strife. It is not a cult of bomb and pistol. Bhagat Singh made this statement to clarify that his idea of revolution was not limited to violence or armed action. He believed that real revolution meant a complete transformation of society, including the end of colonial exploitation, social inequality, economic oppression, injustice. Bhagat Singh and his associate became famous after throwing bombs in the Central Legislative Assembly in 1929 along with Batukeshwar Dutt. The bombs were intentionally non-lethal and were thrown mainly to protest against the repressive British laws and to make the deaf hear. During the trial, Bhagat Singh explained that revolution was not about glorifying violence but about bringing a radical political and social change. He was deeply influenced by socialist ideas, anti-imperialism, revolutionary nationalism. He believed that independence should not merely transform power but transfer power from the British rulers to Indian elites, but should also create a just and equal society. The other options are obviously incorrect, right? So Bhagat Singh. Next. Abhinav Bharat Society was a secret society of revolutionaries. It was established in Bombay. Abhinav Bharat Society was a secret revolutionary society established in Bombay Presidency by Vinayak Damodar Savarkar and his brother Ganesh Damodar Savarkar in 1904. The organization was founded in Maharashtra, which at that time formed part of Bombay Presidency under the British rule. Abhinav Bharat was created to organize revolutionary activities against the British colonial rule and to inspire armed resistance for Indian independence. The society worked secretly and attracted young nationalists who believed that freedom could not be achieved only through petition and constitutional methods. The organization was influenced by revolutionary nationalism, Italian nationalist movements, and secret revolutionary societies in Europe. Members of Abhinav Bharat spread nationalist literature, encouraged military training, and promoted revolutionary ideas among youth. Several several revolutionaries associated with militant nationalism came into contact with the organization, and its ideas influenced revolutionary movement in different parts of India. Okay, so Abhinav Bharat Society was actually created in Bombay Presidency by two brothers, Vinayak Damodar Savarkar and Ganesh Damodar Savarkar in 1904. 1904, early 20th century. Next. Which one of the following discovered the sea route to India in 1498? We have already answered this question. Vasco da Gama. Vasco da Gama from Cape of Good Hope, right? Vasco da Gama sailed from Portugal in 1497 with a fleet of ships and traveled around Cape of Good Hope, located at the southern tip of Africa. After moving along the eastern coast of Africa and crossing the Indian Ocean with the help of monsoon winds, so he was traveling with the help of monsoon winds and local navigators, he finally reached Calicut on the Malabar coast of India in May 1498. At Calicut, Vasco da Gama met the local ruler known as Zamorin. Although the first trading mission faced several difficulties, the voyage successfully established direct maritime contact between the Europe and India for the first time. The discovery of the sea route to India became one of the most important events in the world history because it transformed international trade and opened the way for European expansion into Asia. After Vasco da Gama's success, the Portuguese established trading centers and colonies in India and at places such as Goa, Cochin, Daman, and Diu. Later, other European powers, including Dutch, English, and French, also entered Indian trade and politics. Thus, Vasco da Gama's voyage not only connected Europe and India directly through sea trade, but also initiated the long period of European commercial expansion and colonial influence in Indian subcontinent. So, Vasco da Gama is the right answer. Next, the Harappans brought gold from present-day Karnataka. Karnataka, yes. And in Karnataka, where did they get gold from? They get gold from Kolar Gold Mines, KGF. The Indus Valley Civilization obtained gold from the region of present-day Karnataka. Archaeological evidence indicates that the Harappans maintained extensive trade networks across different parts of the Indian subcontinent and acquired important raw materials from the distant regions for use in craft production, metallurgy, and ornament making. Gold was one of the valuable metals used by the Harappans for making jewelry, ornament, decorative object, beads, and luxury items. Historians and archaeologists believe that much of the gold came from Kolar gold fields. Kolar gold fields located in present-day Karnataka. These gold-producing regions were among the earliest sources of gold in India. The Harappans were highly skilled craftsmen and possessed advanced knowledge of metalworking techniques. Excavation at Harappan sites such as Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Dholavira, Lothal have revealed that they finely crafted gold ornaments and beads, showing sophistication of Harappan metallurgy and artistic craftsmanship. The Indus civilization depended greatly on long distance trade because many important raw materials were not available locally. The Harappan developed extensive commercial connections and obtained different resources from various regions they acquired. They acquired copper from Rajasthan, precious stones from Gujarat, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, and other materials from Central Asia and Peninsular India. The movement of gold from Karnataka to Harappan's urban civilization demonstrate the existence of organized trade routes and economic coordination within the civilization. It also reflects the prosperity and commercial development of the Harappan economy, which was one of the most advanced urban economies of the ancient world. Karnataka, KGF. Next. The Hindu college was established in Banaras in 1791. The Hindu college at Banaras was established in 1791 during the period of the British East India Company rule in India. The institution was founded by Jonathan Duncan, who was the British resident at Banaras. The college later became to be known as Banaras Sanskrit College. The institution was established at Varanasi with the objective of promoting traditional Hindu learning and Sanskrit education. At that time, the British administration followed a policy of encouraging Oriental education and supporting the study of Indian languages, laws, philosophy, and religious texts. The college mainly focused on subjects such as Sanskrit literature, Hindu philosophy, Hindu law, theology, classical Indian learning. One important reason behind its establishment was administrative convenience. The British officials wanted trained scholars who understood Hindu law and scriptures because colonial administration often relied upon traditional legal principles and dealing with Hindu social and legal matters. The institution soon became an important center of Sanskrit scholarship in northern India and attracted students and scholars interested in classical Indian education. It reflected the early phase of British educational policy before the law emphasis on English education associated with figures like Thomas Babington Macaulay. So before the Macaulay entered the whole picture, the Britishers were okay. It reflected the early phase of British educational policy. So Britishers were okay with Sanskrit, but it was Macaulay who, in Macaulay's minute, he basically changed the whole perspective of the Britishers regarding the Indian educational mediums. The establishment of Hindu College at Banaras also demonstrated the importance of Varanasi as historic center of Hindu religion and Sanskrit learning and intellectual tradition. Moving on. The al-Islam Mosque and Minaret were buildings during the last decade of the century. So Muhammad Ghori comes to India in 1192, and he appoints Qutbuddin Aibak as the individual who is going to be responsible for that region. So Qutbuddin Aibak, as soon as he becomes the governor, he will appoint the first thing he will do is build Quwwat al Islam Mosque, and Quwwat al Islam Mosque will also be known as is also the first mosque in North India. Before Quwwat al Islam Mosque, the mosques were built, but they were built in South India in Kerala because Arabian traders used to come all the way to Kerala. But first mosque which is built in North India is Quwwat al Islam Mosque, and it's being built by it is being built by Qutbuddin Aibak, and that is done by Qawwat Qutb, uh, and it is being built in 11 some late 1100s. So this is late 12th century, 12th D, yes D. Qawwatul Islam Mosque and Qutub Minar were built during the last decade of 12th century after the establishment of the Turkish rule in North India. Their construction marked the beginning of the Indo-Islamic architecture in India and symbolized the rise of the Delhi Sultanate. Following the victories of Muhammad Ghori, after defeating Prithviraj Chauhan in the Second Battle of Taran in 1192, Muhammad Ghori established the Turkish political control over parts of North India. His general and trusted slave commander Qutbuddin Aibak played a major role in consolidating this authority in Delhi. Around 1192-93 CE, Qutbuddin Aibak constructed the Quwwat al-Islam Mosque in Delhi. It is regarded as the first mosque built in Delhi after Turkish conquest. The mosque represented both political victory and establishment of Islamic religious authority in the newly conquered region. Historical evidence shows that the parts of the mosque were constructed using material taken from demolished Hindu and Jain temples. Because of this, many pillars and architectural features inside the mosque display carvings and artistic styles associated with early temple architecture. This mixture of Indian craftsmanship and with Islamic architectural forms became an early feature of the Indo-Islamic architecture. Around 1199 CE, Qutbuddin Aibak also began construction of Qutub Minar, which later became one of the most famous monuments of the medieval India. The tower was eventually completed by his successor Iltutmish. The Minar was built mainly of red sandstone and served both religious and political purpose. It symbolized the victory of power and power of the new Turkish rulers and was associated with nearby mosque complex. The monument the monuments are historically important because they represent the beginning of large-scale Islamic architecture in India and reflect the cultural and political changes that followed the establishment of Turkish rule in North India during the late 12th century. So, Quwwatul Islam Mosque is being built in late 12th century, right? Moving on. So, the following towns grew as a temple town during Chola dynasty. Which of the following towns grew as temple town during the Chola dynasty? So obviously these three come in Deccan region, and Deccan was not ruled by Chola. Chola only were ruling the south. So Billaswamin is the right answer. Billaswamin was an important temple town mentioned in the early medieval Indian history, and is mainly known from references in the historical and literary sources related to temple-centered urbanization. It is especially significant in the context of understanding how towns developed around large temples during the early medieval period, particularly under the powerful dynasties such as the Chola dynasty. In early medieval period, temple towns were not merely places of worship; they functioned as major towns of economy, administration, land management, culture, education, trade, and social organization. As rulers increasingly patronized temples through donation of land, wealth, livestock, gold, and villages, large settlements began to develop around important temple complexes. Billaswamin is regarded as one of such temple-centered settlement. The growth of the temple town became particularly prominent in South India during the Chola period between the 9th and the 13th centuries. The Chola rulers built the massive temples and granted extensive land to them. These temples accumulated wealth and became institutions controlling the agricultural resources, trade networks, and craft production and local administration. In temple towns such as Villaswamin, many different social and occupational groups lived and worked around the cities, around the temple economies. So who lived there? The priests, the scholars, the artisans, the sculptors, the metal workers, merchants, accountants, dancers, musicians, all these people. Okay. These records were usually engraved on stones. For what record? The temples, such as temples in town, were often maintained detailed records of land grant, taxes, donation, agricultural production, trade activities. These records were usually engraved on stone inscription and temple walls. Because of this, temple towns became important administrative and economic centers. Temple towns also played an important role in cultural development. Religious festivals, music, dance, performances, Sanskrit learning, Tamil devotional tradition, and artistic activities flourished in these settlements. Temples sponsored education and often functioned as centers of learning where the scholars studied religion, philosophy, literature, and grammar. The Chola rulers also used temple construction and temple patronage not only for religious devotion but also for political legitimacy, royal prestige, economic control, and all the things that, social influence and many things that the kings usually use it for. Any chance the king will get, he will try to increase his social prestige and economic prosperity. He just wants that psychological domination in your mind that he is better than you, he is more powerful than you. And he will do that by using all the ways which are possible. Next, the early Turkish rulers ruled between dash years over India. 1165 to 1198? No, they did not come in 1165. They actually came in 1192. 1192 to 1220. Yes, this is right. 1192, Muhammad Ghori comes to India. Na? Hold, what? The early Turkish rulers ruled between. Huh? Okay, so probably they are not considering Turkish. They are not considering. Yeah, Muhammad Ghori was not Turkish, na? So that's why Muhammad Ghori was an Afghan. So yes. 1192 is not the answer. 1206, right? Muhammad Ghori was an Afghan. Muhammad Ghori was not Turkish. So 1206 to 1290. The early Turkish rulers ruled over Delhi between 1206 and 1290. This period is associated with slave dynasty, also known as Mamluk dynasty, which was the first ruling dynasty of the Delhi Sultanate. The dynasty was founded by Qutbuddin Aibak in 1206 after the death of Muhammad Ghori. Qutbuddin Aibak had originally been a slave commander of Muhammad Ghori, but later became the ruler of Delhi and established independent Turkish rule in India. The important rulers of the early Turkish or slave dynasty included Qutbuddin Aibak, Iltutmish, Razia Sultan, and Balban. Among them, Iltutmish greatly strengthened the Delhi Sultanate and made Delhi its permanent capital. Razia Sultan became the first and only woman ruler of the Sultanate, while Ghiyasuddin Balban strengthened royal authority and centralized administration. The slave dynasty came to an end in 1290 when the Khalji dynasty came to power. Thus, the period of 1206 to 1290 represents the rule of early Turkish rulers over India. So that's it for this particular lecture. We'll see you in the next one. Okay.